I've found the best thing about finishing a long-running series is looking forward to what you get to read next. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back to talk a little science fiction on the channel for a change, because we don't do that nearly enough. Now, like the title does kind of dictate here, I have said that these are going to be some series that I'm interested in getting to after I finish The Expanse. Now, The Expanse by James S.A. Corey, I'm only on book number 4, but I have it on the schedule to finish it in 2023. And it got me kind of looking ahead. What are some sci-fi series I'm interested in finishing after I finish a long science fiction series like that? Now, I'll go ahead and tell you that 2 of them, Red Rising and Ender Saga, those are 2 that are currently ongoing, and they don't have a release date for their final books yet. So I'm not really considering those a part of this. What that is just The Expanse is done, and I have a schedule to finish it. So when you finish a 9-book series, hey, it's always safe to say, hey, I got room for a new series on my list, not just like a standalone or something like that you could fit at any time. So I have narrowed it down to 5 new series here that I am interested in starting now. Well, not next year, but after I finish The Expanse. But the thing is, guys, this isn't exactly a poll or anything real scientific. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to present these 5 series, tell you what they're about, hopefully get some feedback from you guys, because your comments and your feedback on this video will determine which one I do pick. And I think I'd be fine with any one of these 5. Now, I will say that a couple years ago, I did a video on the channel called, I think it was like 14 sci-fi series I haven't read yet. And I've tackled a handful of those, but a handful of them I still have not, because just, have a packed schedule, and I do tend to lean more fantasy than sci-fi. So you might feel like, hey, there's a couple of repeats on here. There are going to be some things that I've talked about on the channel before, and I just haven't gotten to. So if you've been with me for a long time, you might feel like I'm kind of repeating some of these things, but some things have changed, and my opinions on some of these series have changed as well. So I want to make sure that I kind of highlight that going forward. But we're going to kind of jump into it now. Beginning with the first series, this is going to be the Sprawl Trilogy by William Gibson. Now, this is also known as the Neuromancer Trilogy. I'm talking about Neuromancer, Count Zero, and Mona Lisa Smile. I know there's a 4th book they did kind of later, but it is widely considered a trilogy. Now, this is very much like, I say it's kind of like the 1984 of the cyberpunk genre, and it's kind of like a warning about, mankind, the future of mankind, and when we become a little too reliant on cybernetics and machinery and things like that. What point do we stop being human? But I think this is probably the best known cyberpunk series out there. So cyberpunk sci-fi is something I haven't really kind of leaned into yet. I know Altered Carbon was another one that I was kind of interested to after, the Netflix series, like a lot of other people were. But this is the one that everybody always said, no, if you're interested in cyberpunk, this is the place to start, because it is the gold standard. Now, all I know about it, guys, I try not to get too much into these because I don't want spoilers, because you'd be surprised if you Google the title of a book, you'll finally see, like, you'll have Google autocomplete and it'll be like, character dies at, or something like that. I try not to do that too much, but I do go to Goodreads once in a while, and I'll read just a synopsis off the back. And this one says it's like a group of mercenary criminals who secretly work for an artificial intelligence that's trying to break free. So again, I don't know, anytime you get into the ideas of the future of humanity, and the warnings against it, like I love Fahrenheit 451, 1984 obviously is a great one, Brave New World. These are all books I think that warn of things that we are going a little too far with. Now, obviously, the further and further we get reliant on machinery and AI and data, I think that's something that's going to be ever more prevalent now in today's age. So that's why this one did kind of get really high up on that list. Next up on the list is going to be a little more modern, because I do kind of want to kind of bounce back and forth between classic and modern, not make this all just stuff from the 70s, 60s, 80s things. I want something a little more modern. That's why I reached for Old Man's War by John Scalzi. I only have the first 3 books here. I guess it's a good way to test and see if I do like the series. That would be where I would begin. With this one, I've really been interested because it does almost sound like it's like a reverse Ender's Game. Where with Ender's Game, you kind of deal with really young people being enlisted in the military to find like our next great military leader. With this one, you're not able to join the military until you have reached retirement age. That sounds really, really interesting to me. But it says Earth is in an intergalactic war with alien races, but you can't join the military to fight until you reach retirement age, and they only want you for your wisdom over youth, life experience over bravado. Now that sounds very interesting. interesting. So anytime, obviously, you got intergalactic war with an alien species, you've got my attention. Obviously, that's why I read sci-fi, for the pew 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 and the spaceships. That's what I love about sci-fi. But with this one, I love that idea of it not just being, a 15-year-old chosen one protagonist, That's something that we love in fantasy. When it comes to sci-fi, it's like, there's so much more there's relying on technology and stuff than it is just your physical attributes. So that's a great, great plot to set up a universe for this. I've heard mixed things on this series from viewers on the channel. Overall, I feel like it is very widely celebrated as just terrific. But I do know that a lot of the viewers on the channel, some really like it, some have been kind of lukewarm on it. Some say, hey, it's just a great palate cleanser series because these books don't look like they'll be, very heavy reads or anything. I'm not really sure. I've never read Scalzi before. But again, going just off of feedback, it has gotten enough to where viewers sent me that box set right there. And so it's got my interest right there. If they care enough to send me copies of the book, obviously it's important to them. But I'm really kind of curious about this one just because, like I said, I do hear so many mixed things. One person will think it's amazing, and the next person will think it's just garbage. So I'm kind of interested to see where I kind of land on that. But I do, like I said, like that idea that it does sound almost like a reverse Ender's Game. And speaking of Ender's Game, guys, next up on the list is going to be the Ender Saga. Now, with this, I have read Ender's Game. Ender's Game is one of my favorite books ever. It's my second favorite sci-fi book of all time, behind only Dune, and sandwiched in between that and Hyperion, which actually was on that list I was mentioning earlier, and I loved Hyperion. With this, is I've always been afraid to read the sequels. Now, I know that there's a lot of sequels. What I'm talking about here is these 4 books here, the quintet. This is Ender's Game, Speaker for the Dead, Xenocide, and Children of the Mind. Now, I know that he has continued this series since. In fact, I think it's still going. But I am just talking about these 4 books. Like I say, I've always been kind of scared to kind of continue this series because I love that first one so much. And everyone told me it's nothing like the first book. And a lot of people have told me it never reaches those heights again. Other people have told me they think it's some of the best stuff is later. They tell me these books are super freaking depressing, which I don't care, guys. I read grimdark fantasy. I don't care about depressing books. That's fine. I have no problem with that. I like my characters to struggle quite a bit. And I think that was, if I had one complaint about Ender's Game, that was it. Is I didn't feel like Ender struggled nearly enough because he's just awesome at everything. That's usually something that we will trash in fantasy. But in sci-fi, it seems like we can kind of let that thing. So you think of like Luke Skywalker, you think of, Ender Wiggin, that characters who just, everything just kind of seems to fall in their lap right off the go. Now, obviously, we know Luke Skywalker didn't continue to go that way, so that might not be the best comparison. But I'm just saying, I think it's a little different with sci-fi. We'll accept some things out of a protagonist that we usually wouldn't. But I'm curious to see Ender's journey through these 4 books, and obviously his siblings, because his siblings are something that really grabbed my attention in that first book, and I've heard that they do get really expanded on this, and then, of course, an Ender's Shadow series, which actually spins off of this. So, Pie in the Sky, this series goes great. I would love to keep going with the universe that Mr. Carr created, because obviously, if he's still writing books in this series today, and that fandom is still as just humongous as it seems to be, obviously he did something right. And I got to think it was more than just, hey, Ender's Game was great and you're writing that legacy 30 years later. I can't see that. Or however long ago the Ender's Game came out, I don't know. But it's been a long time. And I don't think that he's really just riding that wave off that first book being that good. And then we have all these books afterwards, unless he wasn't writing some other great stuff out there. So, yes, a little trepidation, just because I said I am really, really fond of that first book. But again, if you don't know anything about it, Earth is in an intergalactic war with the Formic, an alien species anxious to destroy all life. Military trained soldiers from extremely young ages to find their next great military leader in the never-ending war with the Formic. Now, obviously, that's the plot for the first book, but just in case you haven't read Ender's Game, I don't want to ruin that for you because that is a great book and you should all read it now. I love Ender's Game. I'll never get tired of talking about why that book is great. Next series up. This is one that was on that list before, and I think it's every time I watch Library of Alexandria, he always talks about Adrian Tchaikovsky. It's just like an author that he talks about nonstop. I said, why haven't I read anything by him? Well, I think the time is finally coming around where I can read is it called Children? I don't know, there's Children of Time, Children of Ruin. The forthcoming is Children of Memory. I don't know if it intends it to be a trilogy or if it's going to be ongoing or what. I don't know if that's the last book or not. But I've heard amazing, amazing things especially about Children of Time, as a book I should read immediately. And I think I've had it on my schedule 2 or 3 times, and it just always continues to get bumped. And the only thing I know about it really is just the synopsis that you get on the back of the book here. It says, deals with humanity leaving the dying Earth behind to find a new home. They follow their ancestors to New Eden, a terraformed planet that can sustain life, but that regime isn't quite as welcoming to them as you might expect. So it sounds like we're going to have like an old guard and the new trying to find a way to coexist on this new planet outside of old Earth. And that might be wrong. That's just kind of what I kind of gathered from that. But hey, I love the idea. Like I love like Lord of the Flies, where you get like establishing a new society isn't quite as easy as you think, especially when it's the adults aren't in the room. And it sounds like there could be a little bit of this where it's like, okay, well, we got to protect our homeland from these our descendants who might not have the same rules that we've applied to this new version of Earth. So yeah, I mean, that's just an age-old tale when it comes to science fiction, and something I'm very interested in. But that series, again, like I said, I don't think I've heard anybody who has read those 2 books that haven't recommended them. I mean, everyone seems to really, really enjoy them. And I'm just curious, like I said at this point, about Takashi himself, because I don't know anything really about his books. But the fact that this guy, he writes on a Brandon Sanderson level, and like the fact that he's just so quick. He churns out big, thick books like this 2-3 times a year. So the guy is just he's just a machine. I think they're starting that. Is it Shadows of the Apt? I think it's called. It's like a 10 or 12 book series, and they're starting to read of that on the Discord this year. And I thought, hey, well, it'd be a perfect time for me to kind of talk about the children books, maybe, especially since the 3rd one is coming out finally. And I think there's been like a little bit of delay on that. Talk about how prolific the guy is, but that's why I don't know if this is supposed to be a trilogy or what, or if he even really ever made. Because from what I recall, there were a lot of other like his author friends who were like bullying him, saying you need to write another children book. And I don't know if he really intended to, but I don't know the whole story behind that. But it is a series I'm interested in. Now, this one's going to kind of be a little bit of a change. I talked in that old video about wanting to read some Peter F. Hamilton. And what I talked about in that one was the Night's Dawn trilogy. Well, after I talked to my buddy Moyd over at Media Death Cult, it's actually a debate I had where I was like, I am going to either read Night's Dawn by Peter F. Hamilton or Revelation Space by Alastair Reynolds. That's going to be the 2 that I choose between. I don't know why I always relate those 2 authors. I don't think they have anything in common, except that hard science fiction fans really seem to love both those authors. And he actually said, I don't think you should read either of those, but I'm going to tell you to choose Peter F. Hamilton, but I'm going to tell you to go with the Commonwealth Saga. Now, with Commonwealth, it's just 2 books. I know there's more that kind of go on it, but the actual main story is just the 2 books, Pandora's Star and Judas Unchained. 2 books that I've heard of on their own. I didn't know that they were part of a series, but these are 2 that he says he thinks would be a little more in my wheelhouse. So, it could be Moyd playing a prank on me. You never know with Moyd. But when he talks about science fiction, I consider him the authority on it. I'm going to listen to what he says to give a shot. So that'll be the one that I am looking at. As far as what the series is about, it says about 350 years in Earth's future, mankind has mastered wormhole travel, but an astronomer notices a distant star system disappearing. It's further away than their wormholes can reach, so they travel by starship to investigate. And what they discover may very well destroy the Commonwealth as we know it. So anytime you got just some intergalactic travel on a starship, that's always going to be a fun journey for me to take, especially once we're leaving our usual star system. That's always fun to explore, because I like to look back at a lot of these classic sci-fi novels and see, we've learned so much since then, and see kind of what they were speculating about before we had a lot of more, scientific data and facts to kind of go off of. So again, that's why we read the science fiction genre, right? Is to explore strange new worlds. But that's the 5 that I have, guys. I'm very interested in seeing which one of these 5 that you guys think I should pick up after I finish the Expanse. Now, I'm not opposed to you guys making more recommendations to me. I just want to let you know it's going to be one of these 5. Okay, I've narrowed it down to this. I did a lot of thinking, a lot of research over the last 2-3 years since I made that video, and these are the 5 that I think I want to choose from. So again, never am going to reject any kind of recommendation that you guys make for me, but I am hoping for feedback on these 5 series. Again, Neuromancer, Old Man's War, the Ender Saga, just the 4, not the whole thing, Ender Saga, the Ender Quintet, I guess it's called, the Children of Time series, and then, of course, the Commonwealth Saga. I'd like you to kind of give me feedback. If you've read multiple of them, rank them, anything that you guys want to do that you think is fun for a little bit of feedback, I would appreciate that, because it's going to go a long way to helping decide which ones I read next, and of course, then I will talk to you guys about. So hit me in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think about these series, which one you think I should read, and obviously, you want to throw out any ideas out there. I'm always willing to listen. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you down below.